Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I am John Sparano, the SDSA, and today I'm pleased to welcome set decorator Ashley Frederick, production designers Steve Leonhardt and Isabella Scannone to discuss their collaboration on Prime Video's successful, record-breaking, and incredibly huge competition series, Beast Games. How are you guys?
Very good.
As a fellow reality competition person, this is really great that I get to talk to you guys because I haven't really interviewed anyone that works in the same thing I do. I've been doing a lot of narrative interviews, so I'm really excited to talk to you guys. But I mean, when you hear we have to create a city, we have to create this, we have to create all this stuff, I mean, that sounds like a lot. So I want to know what your kind of first impressions were, you and Isabella. I kind of want to just hear what your thought process purely design wise was.
All the time, a number of times a year, we get approached for projects that are still in development and people want pitch drawings. And they often describe them as this incredibly big dream of a show that you start drawing and you know, like, you're not worried about budget, you're not worried about anything else. They're trying to sell a show. This show, one of the biggest challenges right off the bat, we only had 100 days before shooting on the day that they hired us. And we didn't know whether they were serious, whether they were going to back it up with the money, whether they really wanted us to design what they were saying they wanted us to design, or whether they actually wanted this scaled back version. And as we started showing them drawings and talking about pricing, I mean, they were serious one way or the other, so they had to figure out how to achieve it.
See, I was looking at your time-lapse video and I was just like, how long did it take you to even just get the place flat? I mean, that seemed like a daunting challenge to me.
It really was. And it's also not the kind of thing that's meant to be done in a rush. So we were building buildings on the pad before they were done flattening it. So everything was happening at the same time. And it was a very frenetic, very chaotic install process.
Now, we're looking at this, or if we're thinking about, let me just jump to the finished product. We have our towers and we have our big, city block basically. Now with the towers, did you have any sort of visual reference you were going off for that, or was it purely about the function of the game and the function of shooting it?
Form definitely followed function with the towers, because by the time you have a structure that needs to have gameplay on 5 different stories that all can hold about 40 people doing they didn't know what when we were in the middle of doing it and still space for shooting. Just to make it a fairly practical shape was an astronomical budget number. So, for better or worse, we kind of had to decide what it needed to do and then make it look good in that form.
Yeah, I know. It was just like, because you're so inside of it in so many different angles and there's so many people running around, I was wondering how you were going to because we're always thinking about backgrounds, in this thing. So it was like, I kind of love what you did with it because you could kind of see outside, at the same time you were kind of seeing inside. So it was almost like, it had sort of a translucent quality or transparent quality where I really think that helps, especially at night, at night and all that. It really, really looked amazing. So anyway, now going back from, let me just talk to Ashley now on this one. Now inside there, and there's a lot of lights and a lot of different things. What else were you trying to add to make your own statement of how that was going to work, decoration wise?
I mean, I don't know if I'd feel like I was trying to make my own statement with any of this. Like I truly felt like my role was these folks have the great vision. They know what they need. They've had all the creative discussions. It's really just about, I need to take the stress off of them and bringing it to life and making sure that it happens the way that it's supposed to. So I was trying to just ask a lot of questions about what is the overall kind of aesthetic that we're going for? And if this is the product that you're after, do we have the capacity to get 520 light bulbs and lamps that all look the same if that's the need for these bunkhouses? And if we don't, then what's the pivot? What's the closest thing that we can offer? So myself and my buyer, we were often just kind of going off of their references and getting the products. And really the challenge on our end was, quantity, because we just needed so many things that were often all matching. It was the stress as well of, can we get it here in time? A lot of it was coming from the States and coming into Canada with, as Steve said, only about 100 days, usually less by the time we were getting to the buying portion. And then on top of that, every small little change or something as simple as, if we get a lamp from IKEA and it needs to be assembled, how long does that take when you times that by 520 units? So it was a lot of timing and scheduling that went through my brain every day.
I know. I was thinking of that too. I was just like, just the sheets alone would have driven me absolutely bonkers. I was just like, well, you need 500 pillows. And I was like, and when the show opens and you see like, all those people, I'm like, wait, we're not putting up all these people. I mean, you're really going to house, what was it? What did it start with? How many 1,000 contestants?
Yeah, and then we cut that in half, but the bunks
Right,
were,
yeah, I saw that.
52 folks could sit in each bunk, so it was actually 520 beds total.
That's insane.
The sheets were a fun one too, because we also had been coordinating as well with like contestant care, and we were talking about what does laundry look like for folks who are going to be staying on longer and longer. So even though there's 520 beds, there was actually double that amount of sheets, just so that we could do the turnover and make sure we had spares and all that good stuff.
So when you called your staging company and said you needed 1,000, this is for Steve, you needed 1,000 boxes that drop out like that.
Drop them!
Did they think you were crazy, or they were like, "Oh, sure, we'll do that"? Or is that an Isabella question?
I think the thing about this show is there was nothing that was really made by just one team. And sometimes that is the way we do these shows, where you get a vendor who's in charge of kind of one piece. But because it was so massive, it really needed so many different people coming together. So some of the work was done by vendors, and this set in particular that you're referencing was really done in pieces. Some of the pieces were fabricated in the US, then we had a whole entire team of people assembling them in Canada, some of which were like highly skilled carpenters from the US, some of them were locals. We have an amazing staging supervisor named Carson who kind of took all the pieces together. And then on top of that, we have a challenge team who had their own set of vendors who were fabricating the games and kind of like all of the things that happen on top of the game. So it really was, no set was built by just sort of one team, the way that it usually happens on kind of smaller productions. It was really like a multi-layered process. And because we had so little time, it was often like, nobody was able to really build something from start to finish. It was like, okay, this person's going to do this little piece while concurrently this whole other company in a different country is doing this little piece. And then at the end, they kind of all come together. And that's the way we had to do all of them, which has its challenges. Sometimes it's hard. Things don't end up fitting in quite the way you thought they would. But it also is a very gratifying way to kind of do something that at the beginning seems impossible by just kind of breaking it off into pieces and giving the pieces to different people that have different skills.
And I guess that's what I'm going for, because visually it does look impossible, and it looks like you guys did it. And also there's a fair amount of CGI, I guess, that was going on in there. Am I right about that?
The way it ended up working, that was always part of their plan. And they wanted some separation between each of those pillars. So each of them was 3.5 feet above a main deck that was 11 feet above the hangar floor, because you had to, build in enough space for people to fall safely into a foam pit. Right. And each of the 1,000 trapdoors below them had 1,000 individualized rooms that people were falling into, and then dozens and dozens of safety people down below who could receive basically every 2 or 3 people so that they weren't stuck in there more than a few minutes.
Now, was there any, I mean, did anyone get hurt? I mean, were you successful in that, or it seems like you had it really covered?
Amazingly, and this is, I mean, we have to admit there's some luck involved in this, but
Sure.
they dropped 500 people without a single trapdoor malfunctioning. They all went when Ionico told them to go, every single one of them, and there were, I believe, 2 turned ankles, which is just about a miracle.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. But yeah, like I said, visually, it's like enormity is what's kind of stunning. But I mean, I love that they add the CGI level. And I mean, it was just, like I said, when I was watching it, it's like continually surprising. And that's the thing I really thought you expect something's going to happen, but then you're like, no, they didn't really just do that.
It's really indicative of how unusual the process was as far as the scope of that set. It's one thing to have a conversation about how difficult it'll be to shoot a set because it's so gigantic. It's a whole nother thing to be unable to find a place on your computer render where you can put a camera that can see the whole set.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's just like I'm sure that was a lot. I mean, there's a whole nother episode about lighting and camera on this, I'm sure. So if we go to the city now, your layout, so explain to me how you kind of orient everything inside of that city for maximum effect.
Yeah, we knew we wanted to zone it out. So conceptually, it's kind of like the gameplay area over by the tower, and then there's a bunch of social areas there, and then we separated the living and eating spaces down onto the other side, and then kind of built from there ground plan wise.
Yeah, and I really liked, and this might be a little more Ashley, when we got to some of these little social areas where everybody's sort of talking. It was surprisingly how much intimacy that you still got in that with all those people on all that time. So I know you got like a million, tables and chairs that all had the match and all that. But just tell me a little about what Ashley, what you wanted to achieve. But let me hear how you felt like your process on that, I guess.
Sure. I mean, I think the sort of interesting element of reality TV, and especially in this capacity where the city is not only a competition space, but it's also where these folks are actually living and spending 24/7, of their day. We wanted to, I mean, the folks here obviously wanted to make it look beautiful and function well for camera, function well for challenges, but also have it be a space that people can have fun, play around, do things that give back to their body. So we had, a weightlifting section. We had sports games that they could play so that they can be physically active and let out stress, let out energy if they need to. The bunks we tried to make as comfortable as we could. We tried to think ahead as well to what are people's needs. And there was also a whole contestant care team who also supported that as well, with a pharmacy on site and other things like that. But I guess in our heads, there was also, those socialization spaces through just how the chairs were placed, to the left of the tower, which I believe was our east side. That was also, of course, just like all connected together, where it could certainly be a lot more social. But I think there's also a fun element of the contestants just made it their own. Sometimes they would rearrange how we placed things, and we sort of, like, once cameras were rolling, we were hands off. We would try to reset.
Right.
While they were asleep, just so that it was kind of back to the standard design. But truly every day we'd find new ways that the furniture had been moved around so that people could have big groups, have lunch together. We'd find so many personal belongings hanging out in bushes where some people camped outside to look at the stars, at night.
Wow.
And then the bunks, as people would, leave and we'd go to clean up, we'd see handwritten notes on the walls and illustrations, and they'd rearrange how the sheets were so that they could kind of either create more privacy or just like make little bubbles for themselves. So I think the contestants themselves just brought their personalities to the space, which probably helped with what you're finding there.
Well, no, really kind of felt, there were times it really felt real, against all that stuff. And now, Steve and Isabella, when you have that many groups of support, like, what Ashley was just saying, how do you keep them out of camera? I mean, it's just like, it's almost like you had the same job putting in stuff in front of the camera as you did outside of the camera. I know even when we do just American Idol, just like, well, just keeping wardrobe out of the camera for a little tiny show is hard. So I'm like, when I'm hearing pharmacies and support staff and caregivers and all these kind of different things, I mean, how did you, because you don't see any of it on the show, and I know it's all there. I know there's hundreds of people working there. So how did you approach getting that out of the way, I think?
The beginning, they wanted the show to kind of feel like there wasn't anyone there. So occasionally you see these characters that are guards. So they did go a long way. Anybody who kind of had to be on camera would have to go into wardrobe. So sometimes they're there, but they kind of blend in because you just kind of think that they're a guard. So a lot of the people that would normally be on camera, like challenge producers, some story producers, people that might have to like dash in and out. Sometimes even people in our department would have to kind of go in wardrobe for the day to be able to be on set. But then other than that, just a lot of like careful coordination of like, you know, when they might be, we did shoot some episodes in different locations. So it's kind of when they're gone for a day, or in the evening time, you know, we did a lot of super early morning, like plant caretaking, because all the plants in the set are real. So kind of just finding little hidden pockets of time to get in there.
A creative idea on the Beast side, not our idea, but there was always meant to be a perimeter around the city. And we had showed some designs with like a giant fence or with a digital print, and they kept pushing us towards Connex containers. And then when we realized how many people needed to be working on set, those all became storage for every department. Everybody had their way in and out of set via them, and so that was incredibly helpful in keeping it kind of tidy.
Now that's a genius move there. I mean, really, all those containers, then like you can use them. I actually like the moat idea you have in your thing here.
that wasn't our idea. That was purely CGI, and
I know, but I would love that to have been real. Now, when, you know, a show like this always has sort of ridiculous facts with it, or ridiculous trivia. Like when I did Love Island, which was big, not this big, but it was very, very, very big. One of my favorite stories was that we bought out every piece of plywood at Home Depot 3 times on the island. So do you have any things, because I know there's ridiculous sort of trivia that has to be attached with this. So any of you, is there something that seemed like kind of a thing that you've never thought you'd ever hear yourself saying or never hear actually happen on a set?
Well, Jimmy's all about world records, and they set 43, I think is the number. And a bunch of them are set related. So
okay, what are they?
I mean, you know how world records go. It's like some of it's how you word things. So of course it's the most trapdoors ever assembled on a set.
Well, that's true.
And,
I buy that.
And I think they claimed one for the linear feet of LED on that set as well.
Oh, God.
I don't have handy the list, but
They did have some running around who would come into our office and be like, I need to know how many of this you've purchased. And I think he was kind of tallying up all the potential world records.
Man.
Remember any of yours, Ashley?
Not necessarily world records, but I know our team struggled to get walkies at the beginning because there are so many folks, like thousands of crew members who obviously all wanted walkies. And so our crew's like, we need walkies. They're like, we can't. And we're like, can you just go get more? They're like, no, we sold out North America of walkies. So we couldn't at first, we were really struggling to even get our team to have the walkies. And then on top of that too, one of my side tasks was the tower. As you saw, it was made of all these steel trusses. And then eventually we wanted to cover them with black vinyl just to kind of hide the shine and sort of change the coloring. And thankfully we found a really great graphics installer who also printed his own vinyl. So they had essentially an endless supply of this black vinyl, but we also ran them out at one point. But thankfully at the very, very end, we were done.
You know, you hear a lot of stories about this show, you know, because Mr. Beast is sort of, you know, such a larger than life sort of character. Now, let's talk about the cash. Now, you know, someone told me the money was real. Is that true?
Some of it.
Now, if you have that much somewhat real money around, did you have security involved in all that?
Yeah, absolutely. Armed security.
The other episode I liked that was away from the set was the train. Now the train thing was amazing. Now where was that? I imagine that was an existing train.
Existing train. It was a couple of hours away, and that was actually designed. Ashley, did you work on that episode? That there was another design team led by Dave Edwards, who
Oh, was that
did a
Dave?
couple of the
Okay.
episodes later in the season, and that was
Yeah.
theirs.
Now going back to the your dorms there, or whatever you call them, your barracks. Now did anyone now I know it's just like this is a reality thing where everybody goes through psychological tests before you go on the show. And like I said, I've done a lot of them. And I don't know if you're allowed to say or not, but did anybody like totally freak out at any point?
No, no, it didn't happen like that. They, as people who were reading the news or paying attention, the play-in round for this got some bad press.
Oh
Um,
no, I didn't see that.
it so they started with a YouTube episode with 2,000 people that played to the 1,000 people that was in
Mhm.
advance of Amazon's, and they got some press about cast care. So by the time they came to Toronto, they had really upped their game as far as making sure that they were taking good care of these people and offering them all of the services that they might need to prevent something like that from happening. And they also narrowed down really quickly. And I think once they got to
Yeah.
200 or so people, everybody could taste the money. Like nobody was done with it. They wanted to win.
Yeah. Now back in the now did anyone actually do anything creative with their space that you were like, I had thought of that? Not that they had anything to work with, but someone did something you were like, wow, I didn't think of turning my bunk into this.
I think a lot of it would relate to illustrations. They had, access to coloring crayons and markers and
Right,
things.
yeah.
So you see some really sweet. Honest, there was one that was a tribute to they called them their fallen teammates, and so they just write the names of all folks who had gotten eliminated, and the list would just grow, daily until they were gone. We also had one strange incident where I think somebody used aerosol deodorant to like graffiti a bunch of the bunks, which when we walked in, we were like, where did somebody get spray paint from? We were freaking out, but then it turned out, yeah, to be pretty easy cleanup, but we were very confused about that.
Wow, wow. Yeah, that was the other thing I didn't for as tough as the show is, and like you said, Steve, the money, it's a lot of money. People didn't seem to snipe at each other as many times as they do on a show for lesser money or, a bachelorette show or whatever. And I think that's a tribute to as much as you guys produced it, it was produced very, very well. It's just like it seemed like you got your drama without ridiculous drama. I know it's not a design thing, but I think that in a way it is. I mean, I think it seemed like there was an openness and a support of all this that really kind of fostered a good environment because it could have, when I started watching, I was like, this could go either way. I mean, you could get people going crazy, but it seemed like it was all very contained and very, I guess, well thought out. So, Steve, I know that I know this did get picked up for another season. Am I correct about that?
You are.
Having done it once, what's in your head to do this again that you would love to, something you might want to do differently or anything like that? Let me hear your thoughts on that.
Well, we can't talk too much about it
Well, I
because
know, I know, I
we're
know.
here in a beautiful construction trailer in an undisclosed
I
location.
see.
Um, but but
Theoretically.
but theoretically, I think it would be exciting to see a different visual inspiration. Like last season, we were given this concept of a doom town, the 40s and 50s towns that the military would set up to blow up with nukes. And
Right.
that was kind of the underlying visual behind that with a little bit of video game flair. But I think taking it in a whole nother direction and imagining a different kind of utopia would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. Now, for you, what was the most sort of gratifying thing that you did once, or gratifying moment when you finally opened up the set and finally had these the contestants come in, because that's always my favorite thing, even on a small level, is when, like I said, on and Isabella too, when you have that set and the contestants come in for the first time and see it, that's the part I always watch, and then I leave and never see it again. But so if you guys can both tell me what was your impressions when that happened. Isabella, why don't you go first, and then Stephen?
I think it was just amazing to kind of see that it did come together. As Ashley mentioned, like the last few weeks were very tough, especially because of the weather. Almost all our sets were outdoors. The weather in Toronto could be super volatile. We had a lot of rain. So the last couple of weeks were tough on sort of every department, as far as just having to work overnights to make up for time lost during the day. And so even more than just seeing the gratification of the contestants, I think it was just such a relief for everyone who worked on the show to kind of get to that finish line. Because there were so many challenges that kind of stacked up toward the end that made it incredibly difficult and exhausting for everyone.
Well, tell me about one. Tell me about one that was particularly tough for you.
I think the biggest was the weather. I mean, we had, as you know, whenever you're working on a show, basically everything that happened, and often there was lightning, so the show was built with a lot of cranes and large machinery, so there were entire days where we'd have to stop down for kind of an entire day. So it was just incredibly difficult to stay on schedule. And as you know, like Ashley's team and kind of any team, the props team, like anyone who kind of comes in and does all the detail work has to come in at the end. So especially with those teams, it was very difficult during the last few days to do everything they had to do. And, you can make the best plan in the world. And once those challenges start to appear, it doesn't matter how amazing of a plan you made, you just have to kind of go with it and do the best you can. And everyone did that to make the show happen.
Now, was there anything you thought wasn't going to get done? Either
Several
of
things.
We did, I mean, the whole tower got kind of completely repainted toward the end. We had, but yeah, like in just overnight by an entire team of painters.
Wow.
But everybody was kind of working down to the very last minute. We also had a lot of LED, like built-in LED in the set. That was a huge challenge to get the quantity of and then get it all working. So I think those were the two biggest challenges for us. And then also some of the other sets, we have a set with 100 cubes we didn't touch on. Those were also incredibly
difficult to
fabricate and get there in time. So just because of the quantity of things, everything was very challenging.
It kind of goes back to something I said earlier, but just the time that it would take to make an adjustment to that change. Like a small one on my mind is the luxury house, which I think we only see for a few moments in maybe episode 2. Was this one nicer kind of bunkhouse that a few people got access to after winning a challenge. And the design for that changed as a sponsor came into play. So it was like, ripping up carpet and changing pillows, which the pillows weren't so bad, but the ripping up of a carpet of something that long, it was like one day to basically lay it all out with a handful of people, because we needed the rest of the folks doing other work, and then redoing it and then redoing it a third time. So things like that, just little changes that, again, you can't predict, but it needs to happen.
And now
the key thing that is different on this show is on other shows, you kind of pride yourself on coming up with a design, having a plan, executing. But one thing we've learned about working with Beast is they really pride themselves on the ability to stay flexible in a way that allows them to change their minds very quickly about something if they get a better idea for a game or story, and they want to do that regardless of the implications that has on the set, on the lighting, so everyone had kind of a big learning curve of like something can be completely finished and beautiful, and there may come a time when they have an idea that is a great idea, will make for a better game, better story, and everyone will have to pivot to kind of support that idea.
Yeah, there's always that evolvement of things that you always have to watch. And now, Steve, back to you for the first question. Yeah, so most satisfying moment for you after creating this giant piece of art.
I think it's related to what Isabella said, but we've been at this a long time. We have a ton of experience, and we know both how to put together a plan to make a show and also how to articulate to the people that we work for the consequences of changes and all of that sort of a thing. This was like putting 10 shows together at the same time. So you've used up all of your best people, all of your best resources, and all of your best tricks by the time you're done with the second 10th of it. And then you're just starting to freelance at that point. You're working with people you haven't worked with. You're coming up with solutions you haven't come up with before, and you don't have full confidence of how they're going to work. And so you'd get to the point when people would suggest a change just in that last 2 weeks beforehand, where you'd give answers you're not accustomed to giving. Like, I can't tell you exactly why, but I feel like that's going to derail the whole train, and I need you to give me an hour to go and think about all of the implications, because there's just too many things happening right this second. But it's risky. So
Yeah.
what that doesn't totally answer your question. What's gratifying about it is that somehow our experience led us to take the right risks for the most part and to get there. Like we did. We were ready to shoot on the day, and that's not a design thing. That's a logistics thing, but it was the hardest part, and it's something to be proud of because it was bananas for a little while.
Yeah, and that's an experience thing, when you like you said, you guys, have all those decisions that have to be made. And a lot of times you can trace your success back to that one decision that you made that was the right decision, whether it's a vendor or whether it's just to do something a certain way, and again, you can go, okay, if I'd screwed that up, this is where I would be, and this wouldn't have been good. Now, Ashley, back to you. Most satisfying part of this. I know we talked a little earlier about this, so let me hear what you have to say on it.
Yeah, I think for me, this was certainly, I mean, this was my first experience actually as a set decorator, which I had talked about in the interview process with Peter. And I was like, although this is a new role for me, here's the reasons that I think I could work in this position. And it related to my experience sourcing, the times that I've had to be very resilient and figuring things out on the fly, where I felt like I was a strong team leader. But ultimately, I think the most gratifying part was the way that I think I got to prove to myself that I am resilient, and that I can make these things happen despite lots of shifts or changing needs, changing scopes. I'm very happy that we did make it through, and it was a really beautiful experience to get to kind of prove to myself that I was capable, to get to work with such a talented team of folks who were very, very experienced and made such a larger than life set. Like it's truly, I hope it's not the last time that I get to work at this capacity. But if it was, then what a great way to go, like this was such a fun time.
And now this is another question for all of you. When you're working with someone like Mr. Beast, who's such a big personality, are you running every detail through him, or are you doing something, as I guess this is more of an Isabella and Stephen question, are you sort of like doing it and going, I'm sure he looked at drawings and stuff like that, but I mean, did you run every detail through him, or were you just sort of like, we get to a point and then we do it and see what the verdict is?
There was most certainly a layer between us and him. So his key creative, Tyler, and Sean Klitzner, who is kind of a head production person at the company, were our regular daily points of contact that were dealing with those details. But well, those guys spoke to Jimmy about his opinions on things. He wasn't really speaking to us directly. He wasn't on the meetings, that kind of thing.
Right. And now, was there any time that he came in and was like, I don't like this?
No.
Well, that's great.
by the time he got there, honestly, what we found was if his people liked it, he was going to like it.
Wow. Well, that's good because I kind of like find the exact opposite a lot of times. It's just like if I would have gone to, whoever show it is, the showrunner, we would have been done years ago. But we got to go through all these things, and a lot of times it's like they mean well, but that's a tricky layer a lot of time that I've found, and I'm glad you guys,
They also
Isabella.
have like many years of sort of a very established language and certain aesthetic things that they like. And I think when we came in, because it is a TV show and it does have some key differences from YouTube, you're not sure what to pull from and what not to pull from. And
Right.
as the show goes on, you do learn kind of what it is that they're trying to take that has been very successful in their videos and put in the TV show, whether it's a look or like a tool or a color that they like to repeat. So it's been helpful for us as we have continued working with them to just kind of watch a lot of his videos, get very educated on what it is that they like to repeat. And that has helped us create the world that they want.
Right. No, I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's like the branding was very strong, and I think you gave it basically took the YouTube thing and then turned it into your own, but it also kind of had that same vibe, I guess, the video gamey vibe. And because I liked, as much as I liked the big city part, I also liked the glossy floor show also. It's like the finale and all this stuff. It was very, very well done. I loved all the anytime I look at it, I'm just like, God, how many decks did you guys use? I keep thinking of Steel Deck the entire time because it was so massively done and so proportioned, and I thought that was really great. So, I mean, I guess that, again, this is Stephen and Isabella, that's sort of like final look when, the final money and the coin flip and all that. I thought that was wonderfully done.
Somehow I feel like that episode 10 design was like the breath of fresh air that we at the end, where we just got to push out one more design. We knew what the vibe was supposed to be. By that time we understood them. We didn't do it until we were already in the shooting, and it was a really easy approval process and kind of a straightforward build, and it was just so nice for the show to let out a gasp.
It was a beautiful design because it was sort of like surprising, and but really gives you that sort of feeling you're at the end of a very long journey. And
obviously, at the end of any show like this, you're really exhausted. But that was a night shoot, and when we got there, literally, my phone just started blowing up from all the producers because they all wanted us to know that Jimmy had walked out and said it was the coolest set he'd ever been on.
There you go. No, I agree. I mean, it was very, very, very strong visually, strong, just in the story. I mean, really, that was sort of my, as impressive as this giant city was, that sort of final set and the final look you're left with was really impressive. I mean, I really have to give you guys kudos on that one. Next question: how long did it take you to clean this up?
Oh, a long time.
Still doing it?
No, but they were wrapping in the city for 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Long wrap I've ever been aware of. We had already forgotten about the show and like gone on vacation and through therapy by the time they were done wrapping.
Now, is there anything that you could? I know production companies are like, okay, we want to store everything that we bought and all this stuff that we want to use later. Are you guys, now that you're getting into it again, the second season, is all that storage coming into play, or was there anything you could use, or is your design so radically different?
It was really limited what they were able to keep just because of the international issues of being in Canada and not wanting to pay duty to bring it back to the US. So they brought only the very most valuable things.
Okay. All right. So you guys are again starting from scratch again in Canada. And is everybody happy that you're back? Did you get a million calls when the show got picked up for a second? Every vendor in town?
Yeah, well, yeah, everybody does want a piece of this pie for sure.
And
I've been
Ashley,
starting
do you have like a sheet product placement yet, or bedspread and pillows yet?
I have, you know what? I just added myself to IMDb for this show, and as soon as I did that, I started getting emails from random companies. So if you folks want them, I can send them your way. But it's like gaming chair companies would like to be part of the Beast Game Season 2, things like that.
Wow. Yeah, like I said, the product placement thing always makes me crazy.
It's so hard to
you-
navigate.
it's terrible. And then when they make that deal, like a deal for millions and millions of dollars, and then you're the guy on set that's stuck having to display that. Like if you watch American Idol, I had to have these poppy cups in front of every, in every shot, in front of every judge. And it was like, okay, I get it. We have a thing with Poppy, and you're trying to make everyone happy, but you also want your set to look good. And yeah, so I'm sure you're going to get a lot more of that this time. If you guys can just give me your favorite set that maybe I didn't talk about.
City and the Tower are favorite sets. But I do also really like the 100 Red Cube set. Is very fun, where they all got kind of locked into a cube. I think that's a very fun concept, like game concept,
Mm-hmm.
kind of just giving people a timeline and giving them, it's up to them kind of how to negotiate. And that's something that I think Beast does really well. They set up these games where the contestants themselves sort of come up with their own rules.
Oh, yeah, right.
Fun to watch. And that set, while maybe doesn't on the surface seem as massive as some of the other ones, it actually was very, very large and very, very challenging to put together. So I think that one's kind of our smaller, less known, but favorite.
Okay, yeah. And Steve?
I like the arc that the city had, where in the earlier episodes it was so sunny and inviting, and the right size for 500 people or 400 people, and it felt very bustling and kind of like a fun place to be. And by the end, when it was reused in episodes 8 and 9, it was absolutely a horror movie set, because it was just so creepy when there's only 10 people in there. And
Right.
I think everybody saw that happening, and the lighting supported that to a great degree, and some of the camera work supported that. But it really, really played nicely, I thought, in those last couple episodes, where they're just alone in this cavernous set.
Right. And at night, everything just drops off in the blackness, when you see it out there. It was like there was a little skyline or something, right? I mean, it's like, I think you could kind of see that.
A little bit. It was about 20 miles north of downtown Toronto, so you could see a little bit of it back
A
there.
little bit, yeah. Ashley, your favorite?
I think, I mean, for sure the city, to me, it felt almost like I was on set of a Marvel movie, just the scope of it all. And sometimes I'd take a little drive around at night and just kind of look at all the lights and this several different cranes holding the biggest lights I've ever seen hanging above it. It just felt pretty monumental. Another one we didn't quite talk about too is the tunnel for the mental, physical, and chance challenges. That tunnel was pretty funky, I thought, with the various doors. But that was interesting. Yeah, I like that one too. Yeah, and I think even talking about the changeover of the bunks, that was a fun challenge on our team as well, that was very particularly planned, just because we only had about, I think it was 2 days when the team had flown over to Panama for the other episode, for episode 5, I believe. The bunk beds initially had come in before that back wall went up of the bunks, if I recall correctly. So it meant that we had to just demo everything. So we had sort of a crew of folks going in, demoing the bunk beds, and then my team would have to follow with cleanup and then resetting to the new set. But we only had about 48 hours to do it all before they came back. So that was pretty cool.
If he misses, your entire team is gone.
I feel terrible. I let down my whole team.
Who is going to drop?
I'm in a literal insane asylum.
This challenge might be the most cutthroat thing I've ever done.
It has been great talking with the incredibly artistic, resourceful, collaborative team of Beast Games. You guys are really, really amazing. And it was just fascinating to hear everything you guys had to say. So goodbye. I hope to see you guys again, and good luck on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.